Well, this is the traditional assessment we get, Jane, after every fiscal event. And I've followed a lot of these over the years, and I've rarely seen an assessment as critical of a budget as this one. Now, of course, the IFS welcomes the spending that's going to support the economy, some £65 billion additional spending that Rishi Sunak's doing. He said it's generous, it's progressive, it's helping the country through the emergency, and the IFS agrees with that and welcomes that. It's just the rest of their assessment that won't be pleasant listening for the Chancellor. So, for example, they're saying that the credibility of the plans to get back into surplus after that big initial spend to get us out of this hole, well, there's not much credibility to them, is what the IFS is saying. For example, chalked in there is a £17 billion cut to public spending relative to the plans that Rishi Sunak had before the pandemic. And Paul Johnson, the IFS director, asked how likely he thinks it is that Rishi Sunak will be able to pull that off, had this assessment.
Frankly, that doesn't strike me as being terribly plausible. The idea that we'll need to be spending less on education and health and social care and local government and all those things after the pandemic than we thought we were going to beforehand just doesn't look in the least bit likely, given that we know, I mean, just even for the minimum things like vaccination and test and trace and PPE and so on, let alone catching up with the huge backlog of operations and the need to catch up children who have lost so much school and the need to help local authorities and so on. These numbers don't look like they're going to hold.
The IFS has also repeatedly focused on what it regards as a double standard. On the one hand, the Chancellor is withdrawing the temporary boost to universal credit for 6 million of the country's poorest families in October. He's done it now for 18 months. But the IFS is pointing out that that's been withdrawn in October, cutting benefits for the poorest families, while on the other hand, his judgment is that you can't raise taxes on corporations for another 3 years. And they're joining the criticism that some other NGOs have made of the effect that that's going to have on those particular families. Now, Rishi Sunak has told us this morning that he acted generously by extending it to that level rather than phasing it out before. And he's pointed to other measures he's taking to help, like Kickstart, like help with paying rent. But the IFS is saying there's no policies here to deal with the inequalities that have worsened over the pandemic between the young and the old, between the rich and the poor, and also between the better and less well-educated.